They rejected you the moment you stopped begging for their attention, the moment you stopped shrinking yourself to fit into their narrow definition of worthy. And you think that's your failure? That's your victory. Listen to me carefully. When you start loving yourself, you become dangerous to people who need you broken. You become a threat to everyone who profits from your insecurity. They didn't reject you because you're not enough. They rejected you because you finally became too much for them to control. You see, there's something most people don't understand about rejection. They think it's about being found lacking, about not measuring up, about falling short of some invisible standard. But that's not what happened to you. What happened to you was the opposite. You finally started measuring up to your own standards. You finally started becoming the person you were always meant to be. And some people couldn't handle that transformation. If this feels like I'm reading your mind, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what boundary you struggle to set the most. I read every single comment, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Here's what really happened. You started saying no. You started choosing yourself. You stopped being available for their convenience and started being available for your own growth. And they couldn't handle it. You stopped apologizing for taking up space. You stopped minimizing your needs to accommodate their comfort. You stopped accepting less than you deserved and started expecting what you were worth. Carl Rogers, one of the most respected psychologists of our time, called this incongruence. When the people around you can't accept your authentic self, they'll try to pull you back into the version of you that served them better. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. Their rejection isn't about your worth. It's about their fear. Their fear of losing the version of you that was easy to manipulate. Their fear of facing someone who knows their value. You see, when you were struggling with low self-esteem, you were convenient. When you were desperate for approval, you were manageable. When you were willing to accept scraps of attention as proof of love, you were controllable. But the moment you started recognizing your worth, the moment you started demanding to be treated with respect, everything changed. When you love yourself, you stop accepting crumbs. You stop pretending that attention is affection. You stop confusing someone's need for you with their love for you. You stop making excuses for people who show you through their actions that you're not a priority. And that terrifies people who are counting on your desperation to keep them comfortable in their mediocrity. Think about it. When did they start pulling away? Was it when you stopped chasing them? When you stopped dropping everything for their emergencies? When you stopped accepting their half-hearted efforts as proof of their care? Was it when you stopped being their emotional dumping ground? When you stopped making yourself small so they could feel big? I'll tell you exactly when it happened. It happened when you realized that love isn't supposed to feel like begging. It happened when you understood that real connection doesn't require you to abandon yourself. It happened when you stopped confusing their chaos with passion, their inconsistency with mystery, their inability to commit with being complicated. They didn't reject the real you. They rejected the you who refused to stay small, the you who refused to dim your light so they could feel brighter, the you who finally understood that begging for love is not loving, it's surviving. The you who realized that constantly proving your worth to someone is actually proof that they don't see your worth at all. And you know what? Good. Let them reject that version of you. That version of you deserves better than someone who only loves you when you're convenient. That version of you deserves better than someone who needs you broken to feel whole. That version of you deserves someone who celebrates your strength, not someone who profits from your weakness. Because here's what they don't want you to realize. Their rejection of your healthy self is actually a confession. It's them admitting that they preferred you damaged. It's them admitting that they were more comfortable with your insecurity than your confidence. It's them admitting that what they called love was actually just them enjoying having someone who thought they were lucky to receive their attention. Here's what Nathaniel Branden discovered in his research on self-esteem. When you truly love yourself, you automatically raise the standard for how others can treat you. You stop accepting disrespect as normal. You stop accepting breadcrumbs as a full meal. You stop accepting confusion as romance. You stop accepting inconsistency as acceptable behavior. And some people can't meet those standards, so they leave. And that's not your problem. That's your protection. But listen to me. Their leaving isn't your loss, it's your liberation. You spent so long trying to be lovable that you forgot you were already worthy. You spent so long trying to prove your value that you forgot your value was never up for debate. You spent so long chasing people who were running from commitment that you forgot there are people who are running toward it. You spent so long accepting treatment that made you question yourself that you forgot how it feels to be celebrated. Let me tell you something that might be hard to hear. The people who reject you when you start loving yourself were never loving you in the first place. They were loving your willingness to accept less. They were loving your desperation. They were loving your inability to walk away. They were loving your fear of being alone because it meant they could treat you however they wanted, and you'd stay. When you love yourself, you become selective. Not because you're bitter, but because you're wise. Not because you're closing your heart, but because you're protecting it. Not because you don't believe in love, but because you finally understand what love actually looks like. You understand that love doesn't require you to constantly earn it. You understand that love doesn't make you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You understand that love doesn't leave you questioning where you stand. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink. Real love doesn't require you to beg. Real love doesn't disappear when you start having standards. Real love celebrates your growth, not your desperation. Real love doesn't punish you for having needs. Real love doesn't make you feel grateful for basic respect. So when they rejected you for loving yourself, they did you the biggest favor of your life. They showed you that they were never worthy of your energy in the first place. They showed you that what you thought was love was actually just familiarity with dysfunction. They showed you that you were settling for someone who saw your love as an option, not a gift. And now you're free. Free to find people who celebrate your strength instead of exploiting your weakness. Free to find people who love your boundaries instead of testing them. Free to find people who see your self-love as attractive, not threatening. Free to find people who understand that your worth isn't negotiable and your standards aren't suggestions. The rejection you're mourning wasn't a door closing, it was a cage opening. You're not losing love and you're making room for it. Real love. The kind that doesn't ask you to choose between loving them and loving yourself. So thank them. Thank them for rejecting the version of you that refused to stay broken. Thank them for showing you that their love was conditional on your pain. Thank them for proving that they were never your person in the first place. Because your person will love you more when you love yourself. Your person will be proud of your growth, not threatened by it. Your person will see your self-respect as a gift, not a punishment. You thought their rejection meant you were unlovable. But it actually means you finally became too lovable for someone who was never capable of loving you properly. And that's not your loss, that's your upgrade.